All right. Welcome everybody to this week's Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. We've got a really great show ahead for you. A little bit later on here in the show, we have joining with us for our discussion today, Rachel Andorfer from Auxhart Gardening. Really looking forward to having her back on the show. She was one of our guests on last season's Let's Get Growing show. So it's going to be great to have her back for an even cooler, longer discussion. So I'm really excited about that, as well as hopefully in just a little bit too, we'll see if it works out. We're checking out technical things to see if maybe that might happen, but maybe we'll have a surprise guest coming up here a little bit in the show. We'll just keep it at that just in case it doesn't work out. But hopefully maybe that'll work out as well too there. But if you are joining with us right now on the show, definitely hit that like button, click the thumbs up there, and subscribe to the channel as well too. Hit the bell notification so you be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams right here on the Urban Gardener channel. And then definitely share with all of your gardening friends and let them know about the Let's Get Growing show live here every Saturday and Sunday. 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, definitely let everybody know about the show for sure. And a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching our replay. We know that not everybody can come and watch us live at the time we're here on the weekends, but we get a lot of people who love to watch the show on the replay. So a big shout out to all of you. And if you are watching us on the replay, get down in the comments below. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you've got growing on. Let me know if you got any suggestions for the show, all of that sort of fun stuff. Love hearing from all of you. And if you can as well too, get down in that description below, and there's a link down there for our Facebook group. It's the Let's Get Growing Gardening group. This is a great fun gardening group where you can share all the things that you've got growing on in your gardens. I love to see everything that you all have growing on. So definitely come and join with us there in the group, and let me see what you've got growing on. It's really kind of fun to be able to do the show, do the videos and all that sort of stuff, and share with all of you all the things I've got growing on. And the group is just a really great way for all of you to be able to share with me what you've got growing on. And if you do have a chance to, and you didn't get to join us yesterday for the Saturday edition of the Let's Get Growing show, we had a really awesome discussion with Linda Votter. Just really great gardener, someone I really love her videos and just her presentation. She's just an awesome gardener, very, very smart. And again, love her videos. It was really great to have her on the show yesterday and just have a really fun discussion about gardening. That's, because that's what we're here all here about, is just kind of sharing our passion and love for growing and gardening. And Linda's definitely a leader in that when it comes to the gardening community. And it was just really wonderful talking to her. And as well, we got to meet Rochelle Bingham from Brampton Gardener joined with us for the Are You Following Me segment yesterday. So that was really great to meet her as well. So go and check out that video, as well as also, again, too, last weekend we had a really fun discussion too on peppers. Peppers being one of the things I really love growing, one of my favorite plants to grow in the garden. And so we had a really fun pepper weekend, kind of a super hot weekend, where we had with us Johnny Scoville, and he was one of the stars of Hulu's new series called Super Hot's The Spicy Life of Pepper People. And it's really a really kind of fun reality show featuring different people that I've gotten to know over several years of kind of participating in and being a part of the pepper growing community. And it was a really fun show, really well put together. And it was really great to get Johnny on the show, talk all about that, talk about spicy peppers and all of the things that the spicy people really love. I mean, I'm not a person who really enjoys the hotter peppers. I love growing peppers, all types of them, even the super hot ones. But I'm not necessarily enjoying eating something that hot. And Johnny Scoville is definitely one of those people who can eat Carolina Reapers like they're candy. So definitely, definitely, you want to check out that conversation with him and talk all about what it means to be a chili head and all of the things that come along with being a connoisseur of very, very spicy things. And then also you could check out our Sunday edition from last week when we had Smokin' Ed Curry, who is and what he let us know on the show too, 3-time world record holder for the hottest pepper in the world. The two I know of course, the Carolina Reaper and the new one that was just announced this last fall, the Pepper X. So this was a really fun conversation with Ed, who created these peppers, and we got to talk with him all about cultivating these really super hot peppers and breaking world records with these hot peppers. So just a really, again, really fun conversations for us there on the last week's Sunday edition as well with Ed Curry. So I encourage you all to go back and definitely check out those shows as well too. So yeah, lots and lots of fun things growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, it's just really awesome to have all of you here with me today. Let's see who we got in the chat room with us right now. We've got Rick, great to see you. Thanks for joining with us here on the Sunday edition. And of course, we've got with us YouTube's greatest moderator. We've got Jay Dixon in the chat with us, moderating all of our conversation in the chat box and dropping in lots of great links and joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. So thank you, Jay, for being here again and helping us out with the chat. Let's see here. Dusty Flats. Nice to see you. It's great to see you again. Right on, right on. Almost ready to plant. Well, awesome. Yeah, that's great. And we got with us our sponsor, Ivy Organic, joining with us in the chat as well too. Great to see you, Charles and Adam, listening to us here as well too. But busy working. Some of us got to take advantage of our weekends and get busy working in the garden, take care of all of those sort of things. But yeah, definitely grateful to have you here listening in on the gardening conversation here this Sunday. And we got Michelle joining with us as well too. Awesome to see you, Michelle. Great to have you here. All right. And Michelle says that I'm watching you guys while I'm planting my tomatoes. Well, that's awesome. Really great again too to have you listening to us while we're out and seeing. That's another great thing too. You can just kind of pop us on and listen along as we're having our gardening conversation here while you're working in your garden spaces. I do a lot of that myself too. I'm a real big podcast listener, or I'll even listen into other live streams here on YouTube while I'm out in my garden as well too, getting things ready and getting things going and all of that as well too. So, and again, lots and lots of things going on in the garden spaces right now at this time of year. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today, is what we're doing, getting our gardens going for our new gardening season. And this varies depending on where you're at where you're growing from. Some are, in more southern climates, and you've got a more milder winters, and possibly growing a little bit more and doing things, or at least getting ready a lot earlier than some people who are still waiting. Some of our folks up in Canada and other colder regions, who are still waiting to get things going, but we're still planning, we're still working, we're still doing things as we're preparing to get that garden going. So lots and lots of things going on, especially for me. I'm busy working in a couple of different spaces that we've got to work in, and get ready and prepared for the growing season. We've got lots and lots of things to get growing, lots and lots of food to grow for ourselves. So again, and with all of the different spaces and the different things that we have, that means there's a lot of things that goes into getting them ready and getting them prepared. And I've been busy doing that, and also things going on as well too. Lots of early planting. Some of us who live in maybe colder areas or have colder winters are also getting a head start, because we're starting out a little bit early indoors with getting seed starts, peppers, tomatoes, things like that I've got started indoors right now as well too. So if you are joining with us here today, definitely let us know what are those sort of things that you've got growing on as well too. Jersey Girl joins with us saying, "Hi everyone, I'm listening out in the garden too." Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Great way to partake in the show for sure. Definitely. And definitely be jumping in there and letting us know what you've got growing on as well in your garden spaces this year as well too. All right. So moving on with the show, let's check out what we've got going on in the garden this week. I'm presenting to you a replay of an in the garden that we did. I wanted to kind of feature these kind of showing containers. So it's one of the things that we really kind of emphasize here on our channel and in our videos and things is small space container gardening and that sort of thing. One of my favorite containers, a big feature of our channel on the Urban Gardener, are our 5-gallon water wicking buckets. We recycle buckets, and again, to actually, I'll just say this, I just actually yesterday went over to a place. I have a new person, a hookup that I got that works out of a sandwich shop, a local sandwich shop here, and they have pickle buckets. Almost any sandwich shop. This is a great place too, actually. I've already gone to 2. I've got another one as well, working on saving buckets for me as well too. So instead of buying them, we just go out and get them. There's places that are tossing these things out because they're going through so many of them. I got the hook up on this guy for this sandwich shop about a month or so ago, and I just picked up like 18 buckets from him yesterday. So I'm telling you, this is a great way to do that. And so check out our feature here in the garden, and check out our 5-gallon wicking buckets. So, all right, gardeners, we are in the garden this week talking about growing in containers. Now, containers are a great way to maximize any garden space, but especially for those of you who are growing in smaller spaces, containers are practically necessary. Now, there are all sorts of different containers that you can grow in your garden spaces. Got this one here, big, large ceramic pot, growing this tree in here. Got this big, large nursery pot here. We have this other tree growing in. I'm growing blueberries in big, large storage containers. We're also growing out of these big, large 45-gallon felt pots. And there are smaller felt pots as well. I've even repurposed a small little barbecue, and we're growing strawberries out of that. There's all sorts of things that you can use for containers. We use a lot of these
5-gallon water wicking containers. In our garden space is here. You see a bunch of peppers there. We're even growing some cabbage, some Brussels sprouts. We've got some onions growing here. We grow all sorts of things in these 5-gallon containers. I'll show you how we put those together here in a moment. But one of the things you really want to think about too is drainage, and making sure that your good soil is able to drain out properly from the bottom of your container, or in this case, they're drinking the water up into the root systems for these sort of containers there. But you want to make sure that if you're just getting a regular standalone container or you're repurposing something, you want to make sure that it drains really well. And you want to make sure again that you're keeping all of your plants nice and watered well, because that's going to be important to keeping good plants in containers, is not letting them dry out, which makes these containers just really great for that as well too, because we want to make sure that we're not damaging any of our roots and any of our plants. So we want to make sure that our containers are not drying out. One of the other things you can think about as well too in a patio space or any other type of garden space is setting up some automatic drip systems so that you can have drip brought to each of your containers as well, in order to ensure that they're not going to be drying out, and you'll have some really great plants to harvest later. Another thing I recommend when thinking about containers for different things you're growing in your garden is thinking about what color they are. We've got those dark nursery pots, the black ones, and those can really absorb a lot of heat in the sun. And that's one of the things we want to think about, is trying to reflect some of that sunlight and some of that heat. So some of those plants that we've got that are going to be in real full sun, we're going to want to make sure that we are utilizing a kind of a white or a really light color in order to reflect that sunlight. This one here, we've actually painted the white color, so that's one thing you want to think about, is making sure that those ones that are going to be in the sun aren't going to get too hot and therefore really just cook and dry up really too fast. So let me go over real quick how we put these 5-gallon water wicking bucket systems together. It's really easy, and in fact, you know, it's really inexpensive too. So I challenge you to go price out all these sort of different containers that you could be using in your garden centers, ones that are about 5 gallons worth of root space in them, and see if you can't buy one of those containers for around $1 or less. I'll bet you can't. That's that's one of the things that makes these water wicking systems really, really awesome, and again, really simple as well too. It's just basically 2 buckets. We got 2 buckets, one on the bottom, one that goes in on the top there. The bottom one is basically your reservoir bucket, and it's going to have, the only thing that you need to do to it is put in these 2 holes that I've put on each side, about 3 inches up, so that the water doesn't overflow the bucket and saturate the soil in the top bucket where your plant is going to be growing out of. And again, top bucket, really simple. We've got a 3-inch hole on the bottom. That's going to be probably the priciest thing of the whole project, and if you can find someone who has a whole drill bit that you can get that does 3 inches, you'll be even better. But if you have to purchase one, it's probably about the most spendiest thing. But if you're building several of them, it can be well worth the buy. And you get these net pots here that go into the 3-inch hole that you're going to drill out. We also have a 1-inch hole where our PVC pipe fits through the top bucket, which goes into the bottom bucket to fill it up with water. You can see we've got a little notch that we've cut out of that so it doesn't sit flush against the bottom. We can flow some water into our reservoir bucket. And then we've drilled some regular holes also as well for roots to also be able to stretch out and reach for some of that water in the reservoir bucket. But again, real simple, real inexpensive. The price just goes down more and more the more you're able to resource some of this stuff other than being able to buy it. You can get 5-gallon buckets. They're on sale at a lot of different big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, places like that. You know, anywhere from $3 to $6 or so for each bucket. But you can get these for free. Go to your restaurants, bakeries, some grocery stores. They also have bakeries that are going through all sorts of these buckets and are just kind of tossing them out anyways. So I'm sure you can get some of them to set some aside for you. I mean, it's how we've resourced all of the 5-gallon containers that we use here in our gardens is right free from a local business. And I'm sure you can find one as well too, which again can make these things even less and less expensive each in order to build. And they're just really great. You know, one of the last things I want to say is once you've chosen a container that you're going to use in your garden, you now want to think about having a really good, well draining soil, and that you are fertilizing your plant in that container maybe just a little bit more than what you would fertilize in your regular garden, especially if you're using a regular container where the plants are draining from the bottom. That can leach out a lot of nutrients, so you're going to want to replace those nutrients just a little bit sooner than what you would in an in-ground garden space. So you want to feed just a little bit more with a container. That's one of the things that also makes these 5-gallon wicking containers even better. They basically feed the water up into the soil system and the root ball, and so they're not necessarily leaching all of the nutrients as much as a regular container would. All in all, containers are a great way to expand your garden space. Again, like I said, whether you've got a regular garden and you've got you know, lots of in-ground space and lots of garden space, there's always some places where you can fit some containers and grow in some containers as well. And again, really important for those who are growing in small spaces. So hope you go find some really good containers for your garden and expand your garden spaces, and tell me all about it. I'd love to hear about all of your container gardens that you grow in. Right down in the description below. And thank you again for joining me here in the garden this week. We'll see you all on our next video.
Right. All right. All right. Nice, fun little segment there on our 5-gallon water wicking buckets. I mean, those are really lifesavers for me where I grow. We grow through so much of an extreme summer, lots of heat, you know, and, you know, if you're growing in containers, you're growing in small spaces and dealing with such high heat like that. I mean, those containers are drying out quickly, you know, drying out faster than your plants can actually drink you know, the water that you're giving to them. And you need to kind of really be on top of that. So if you have a good drip system going to each of your containers and making sure that they are staying moist, then, you know, that's a good setup. But those 5-gallon buckets, I'm telling you, you really, during the hottest part of my summer, I really only have to check those things maybe, you know, every other day. You know, I'll check on them and see, but maybe fill them back up, fill the reservoir back up, maybe, you know, every other day, every 3 days or so, even during some of our hottest, like in the hundreds temperatures that we have here in our area. So if you do live in a really, really warm area, these are really, really helpful because they're really making sure that your containers are not drying out, and really, really helpful. And it gets hot in other places, even in some of those where regions where it's colder and people are still waiting to get their garden started. You can still get some hot days during the summertime, and you're out enjoying things and having fun and all of that, and you don't want to turn around and come back to your garden space and find all of your containers all dried out. So like I said, those are really great containers and easily sourced as well too. Let's see, we got Sam joining with us there. Hello everyone. It's hoping everyone is having a great day so far. Hope you are too, Sam. And he's saying, oh nice, I was looking into wicking buckets. Yes, I'm telling you, these are such great, one of my favorite things. In fact, really just so glad I found those years and years ago, because they just are really awesome. 5 gallons of growing space is plenty for a lot of things that we grow in the garden. As you can see in that video, I grow plenty of things in there. Mostly a lot of them grow peppers for us, but we grow lots of other things. There are plants that are bigger and larger type plants that 5 gallons is just not going to be enough for. Tomatoes, definitely one of those. If you want large tomatoes, if you're growing cherry tomatoes, though, I've grown plenty of different cherry tomato varieties right out of those 5-gallon buckets and gotten really decent amounts of harvest off of those as well too. But if you want something big, you want something nice, just you're going to need something just a little bit bigger than that as well too. Let's see. Dusty says, the way those peppers are growing, I think I'll need grow bags. Said that's what Cabin Fever and Garden Channels do. I started too soon. Getting everything going a little. See, that can be a thing as well too. Timing is kind of the key when it comes to getting things started early in your garden. All right, here. Let's see here. Melissa joining with us. Nice to see you. Nice to see you here. She says she's from Texas. Awesome. And using grow bags. Grow bags are great. They're awesome. The thing about those, again, too, if you are using grow bags, really good, especially, Texas and other places that are really warm, good to have a drip system set up where you can keep those, again, from drying out, because grow bags, that's one thing I found around here is that they can dry out pretty quickly. Yep, look at that. Melissa says right there, grow bags dry out pretty fast, right? Yeah, exactly. They do. And I have found that out as well too. So really good idea to have some drip set on those as well. Yep. Sam was asking the same question there too. Do the grow bags dry out fast in Texas? Yes. Yeah. Anywhere where you're going to be hot, they're going to dry out fast enough, or pretty fast. You're either going to stay on top of them and make sure that you're getting them watered plenty, or a drip system is going to be really, really helpful in that case. Let's see here. Oh, I like this idea. I heard grow bags in the kiddie pool was a good solution. Yeah, I mean, I guess, in a way, it kind of worked like a dish, that you would use for a pot, for your house plants or any other smaller ones. I have several outside. I do that as well, to where I can water from the bottom and have it soak up the water. So, yeah. Connie joining with us. Good to see you, Connie. Awesome. Jersey Girl says, grow tomatoes and grow bags with no issues. That's awesome. Yeah, grow bags are awesome. They are really, really awesome. In fact, I'm going to be using a few more of those this year as well too. I have a couple of extra bigger ones I haven't filled up, so I'm going to use some more of those and fill those up this year too. I do really like those. Yes, awesome, great. Well, let's see here. Make sure I get through all of these comments. I want to make sure I get everybody acknowledged here. Awesome. So yeah, great to have everybody here. If you haven't joined in the conversation yet, definitely jump in the conversation and and let us know what you got growing on, and let us know if you got any questions or anything as well too. We got our guest coming up here in just a minute, and definitely bring those questions during our discussion. And yeah, all right. Well, we'll be right back here in just a moment with our featured guest. Hey, gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. So, all right. That's what we're talking about this week. What do you do to get your garden prepared for the new gardening season? So, definitely jump into the comments there. And again, if you have any questions or anything as well, get into the comments, and we'll feature them here on the show. So, let's welcome back a featured guest.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right, all right. Today we have returning to the show with us, Rachel Andorfer from Auxhart Gardening. So awesome to have you with us today, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining with us again.
I'm really excited to be asked back on the show. I remember, I think it was about a whole year ago that I was on the show.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. And yeah, great conversation, and we had such a wonderful time talking, uh, with you and everybody else. That's one of the reasons why we kind of started this whole new Sunday edition of the show, is that we've got all sorts of new great people to talk to for the season this year. But I wanted to have people back because we had such great conversations with folks. And so we, decided, well, we'll do this Sunday edition of the show. And the idea was kind of to do roundtables. And that was kind of the thing what we were talking about. And so far, I've made 2 attempts so far for my garden roundtables. The week before last, we had we were supposed to have our good friend Kang Starr join in with me, with my friend Christopher Bransdahl. He's a good friend and gardener from Norway, and we usually get together for like a first day of spring live stream that we've done over the last few years. And so that was our first attempt at kind of doing the 3-person roundtable discussion, and Kang couldn't make it at the last minute, so it was just me and Christopher talking. And then this week as well too, I had planned another gardener to join us for the conversation, and that one kind of last minute, same sort of situation. But soon we'll be able to do our garden roundtables. But I'm happy enough just to have a fun conversation with you and talk all about what we do to get our garden started for the growing season. So first off, before we get going, let's kind of reintroduce you to everybody. Let everybody know who you are. Of course, we've introduced you by name already, but let everybody know who you are, your channel, and where you're growing from.
Yeah, so as he said, I'm Rachel Andorfer. I'm growing in upstate South Carolina, so that's kind of the pointy part, pretty far away from the coast. And I run the channel Auxhart Gardening, and it really kind of started as me just needing to tell people about my garden because, all my friends are like, okay, Rachel, like you're talking about the garden all the time. And it's really grown into this place where I can teach people how to garden, specifically beginners. Because I think a lot of people garden, they'll garden for a really long time and then they'll start teaching and they forget all those tiny little things that you don't know as a first time gardener. So I've done videos on like how to plant a seed. Feels very basic for a lot of people, but I like to really reach out to those people who are just dipping their toes into gardening for the first time.
Yeah, that's really helpful too. You know, a lot of people are always searching for, good startup information, well, just basic information. In fact, that's one of the things you see mostly out there are a lot of new
Mhm.
gardeners who are just reaching out into the gardening community and looking for, ways and tips to get started, solutions to. I'm sure you get people reaching out to you looking for solutions to why is this not working out.
Mhm.
There's a lot of that sort of stuff, so it's great to be a good resource for new gardeners.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
get a lot of that.
yeah, and again, where are you growing from? It's
Upstate South Carolina,
That's right,
like the
upstate.
inland part.
So you are in that's got to be a pretty warmer region, right?
Yeah, we were zone 7B, and then with the map update, we switched over to 8A. So it's
Okay.
pretty warm here. We've got a very long season, and I think our area for growing is actually perfect. We're right by the mountains, so as weather comes in from the Appalachian Mountains, we're really shielded from a lot of that. So we get very mild but warm weather here.
Okay. Yeah. How are your winters?
Pretty mild as well. We'll get down to like maybe the 20s,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
and not for very long either. We will have very warm days even in the middle of winter.
Yeah. See, it really sounds like me here in Southern Oregon as well, too.
Yeah.
Really, and our winters are definitely getting more and more mild for sure. We
Hmm.
had an actually really warm winter this year. I had crocuses, little crocus flowers are one of the very first ones to bloom up out of the garden every year. And mine were popping up on the third day of the year. January
Wow.
3rd. It was that week, the very first week of the year was like in the 70s. We had a couple of days in the 70s here, which is
Yeah.
just unheard of for sure, but definitely kind of flipped our season around a little bit.
Hmm. I wonder if that makes it super hard for you to grow brassicas there. It's especially hard for me
Mhm.
because we do have those winters where it's like up, down, and the plants
Mhm.
get so confused.
Yes, believe me, my brassicas are my biggest challenge. And again, I try and I'm determined every single year to do well, and I have some decent years
Hmm.
versus anything else,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is a challenge, and it's a challenge in dealing with a lot of things in the garden when the season's so up and down like that, and varying how up and down it is from season to season, which has been a big change for us over the last few years as we're seeing these changes in the climate, and it becomes even more of a challenge for us gardeners. We talked a little bit about this on yesterday's show as well too, about these sort of challenges that it presents for us and how we might have learned something last year. This worked really well. I did
Yeah.
this, I did that. But then because, you had a frost this year that didn't happen this, at a similar time, or, the
Mhm.
temperature warmed up a little bit more earlier than it should have, that changes the calendar again for you that next time. So it's kind of hard, even as
Yeah.
much as we try to create garden journals and to follow what we do to, see those same results year in out, year out.
Yeah, it makes me really, um, I guess, envious of people who've been doing this for a very long time and just kind of have a sense of how the weather's going to go in any particular year. It
Yeah.
would be really nice to kind of have a feel for it.
Yeah, I know. With everything changing, I mean, change is always hard when it comes to anything. We want to know what is happening.
Mhm.
we would like to look in the old farmer's almanac and know that that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe close, but it still varies a lot
Mhm.
lately. Let's see. Sam jumped in and asked just a minute ago, does Oxheart mean anything? Have any significance?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story how I got that name. Back in 2020, right? Everybody started playing Animal Crossing, and me and my partner needed a name for like our world. And
Right.
he asked me like what my favorite thing I grew in the garden was. And at the time it was Auxhart carrots.
Oh yes.
But I didn't want to just name it Auxhart. I needed to like change the spelling to like make it feel more like a town name.
Right.
And so that's kind of how this came about. And I kind of like that it's AUX, like auxiliary, like helpful.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's like helping heart really is kind of how I describe it now, but really it just was a silly name we made up for Animal Crossing Town.
Yeah, yeah. And also the significance with Auxhart carrots that we grow
Hmm.
in the garden. So awesome.
Embarrassingly, carrots are the hardest thing for me to grow. It's even in
Yeah.
my logo and everything.
Again, yeah, those are ones that are up and down for me. And I've found I do well with a couple of different varieties. Nantes varieties work well in the
Mhm.
containers that I grow. Anything really, because I'm most of mine are in these elevated, and I built these really deep elevated beds. They're
Mhm.
probably about 3 feet or more deep,
Yeah.
for a raised bed or even an elevated raised bed that's really deep. And I built those specifically for carrots
Mhm.
because I wanted to grow nice long carrots and find a way to grow long carrots on a patio.
Yeah.
And I've done okay. And the one, like I said, when you try those big long ones though, too, like imperiators,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be really, really long ones. Um, I still get pretty short carrots ultimately. I'd get maybe about 7 or 8 inches. That is probably the longest I've ever grown, and that's maybe only one or two of those over the years.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten carrots that long.
Yeah.
I gravitated towards the Oxheart variety because they're supposed to like bulk up and kind of push out through clay, which is a
Mhm.
lot of what we have here.
Yeah. Yeah, I like those in the little round ones, right?
Mhm.
The little round ones. Yeah, those ones do pretty well. So like the smaller varieties, like there's little fingers. I
Yeah.
can grow little fingers like there's nothing, but getting those really nice, big, juicy carrots is
Mhm.
still like, kind of evades me with growing in containers. And so that's kind of my challenge too this year is to grow some because we have some in-ground space. We haven't tried
Mhm.
carrots in yet over at my friend's place. So I want to try to lay out and get some carrots and hopefully see if it, growing in ground, that'll really
Mhm.
do the trick and get me some nice carrots.
I've had the opposite. I've done way better in raised beds with carrots than in ground.
Yeah.
But I think it's partially just because I'm like really lazy about how I prepare the ground for them. And I think like, the wind and the bugs, and I don't necessarily go out there
Yeah.
and water them consistently. So like my sprouts are really just fending for themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, carrots definitely. I love, and that was our question yesterday too that we had on the show about colors of carrots. So I want to try. That's one thing I want to do is I want to get some like varieties this year too. Like get some of maybe those dark purple ones,
Oh, the
which
purple
which like
nebula ones are so good.
yeah, yeah, which I guess finding out from our trivia question yesterday that those black dark carrots were one of the original carrots, right?
Mhm.
How about that for something that orange carrots that we normally see are something that was bred, that orange color was bred into them
Mhm.
versus these darker carrots that used were the original ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, love to grow some of those other colors though too.
Mhm. Yeah, they're so beautiful.
Right on, right on. So again, you're in a probably a warmer region, but still you get
Mhm.
a cold winter. So there's, do you shut down the garden at all during the winter season, or are you just trying to grow
Um,
and extend your year out at all?
so I am a very lazy gardener, so whatever can grow outside without my assistance is all that gets to be out there. I do get brassicas to grow over the winter usually. If I get them in early enough, I think I've finally figured out the timing to get them in early enough to be big enough to do well over the winters. So I had a pretty big crop of Brussels sprouts this year that started coming in around like January-ish. Fava beans actually do pretty good over winter here for me too. They'll stay really small and they kind of keep dying back, but they seem to like really take off just the second it warms up. So you've got
Yeah.
that established plant just ready to go. Um, I had a few carrots coming into winter. Root vegetables are still kind of hit or miss for me, but I definitely don't shut down fully.
No. Yeah, there's all and again too, you get enough spaces, even the same for me. I mean, I kinda try to shut down a little bit. Again, too, you kinda mentioned lazy gardener. I mean, I get really lazy, and I do try to shut down a little bit during the winter time, during at least the coldest part, but there's always something growing,
Yeah.
I'm still in a moderate enough winter where, my greens will pretty much grow through the winter season, maybe
Mhm.
stop a little bit during the coldest or slow down during the coldest time, the lowest light.
Mhm.
But I'll have greens growing through the season. Those carrots, I just harvested the last of the ones that I had growing through the winter. So, constantly trying to pull carrots, but
Mhm.
they were pretty much already grown by the time, by through fall, but I
Yeah.
kind of let them sit and I just kind of pull them as I go, which is
Mhm.
one of the best ways to harvest if you get the opportunity to do that way.
Yeah.
So there's always things going on, but I do try to shut down a little bit and take a little bit of a break. I do a
Oh,
lot when it comes to gardening. I'm a major garden nerd.
yeah.
I love doing all that, but you got to kind of take a little bit of a break so you
Mhm.
re-gear back up. But yeah. So what are I mean? So I'm sure that this is the time of year for you right now, as you're probably gearing back up, right?
Mhm.
So what
Yeah.
are some of those things you're thinking about as you're getting ready or getting started to prepare for your gardening season?
So ideally, I would be spreading compost in my garden to get kind of ready for the season. I started my seeds back in mid-February. Usually, like right after Valentine's Day is about the right time for me. Um, and so, in previous years, kind of what I've done is I think very traditional, where you have like plants in this season and then you take them out and you put in the plants for this season. And I'm actually trying to transition more into kind of a mixed annuals and perennials style garden, which leaves me feeling like I need to kind of change the way that I amend my soil year over year, because you can't necessarily come in with giant wheelbarrows of compost all the time and like dump it on like, in between all the little plants. Um, so one of the things I'm trying to do is actually install like more in-ground vermicomposting, so
Okay.
that like
Yeah.
throughout the year the worms are kind of doing the work for me, preparing
Yeah.
the beds over and over the whole season. Um, and I haven't been doing that long enough to really like review how it's working, but a lot of people have talked about how well that works for them, and I'm kind of excited to not have to do the yearly grind of moving the compost and putting it in between all the plants and things like that.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. I mean, worms, that's a new addition for me this year.
Mhm.
And I'm totally surprised at this point in time of what I've been doing because I started a worm bin system that I set up for indoors, and bought some worms and got them going. And I've been growing and gardening in my small spaces here for years,
Mhm.
buying worm castings every year to get my seed starting mix started, to add to
Mhm.
the other plants, even the house plants and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm buying worm castings all the time. And I started my first worm system, and I'm like, why haven't I thought of this before? Why didn't I do this before? And what you're talking about there too is something I'm thinking about as I'm moving on into this season as well too, setting up some of those like in gardens, in the spaces, especially maybe some of these elevated raised beds, like that
Yeah.
big deep bed that's full of tons of soil for
Mhm.
them to get around in and all of that. So maybe something in there and a couple of other spaces to test it out and try that out as well too. But
Mhm.
I think that's going to be the real key for us this year. One of the other things I'm doing too differently than what I do normally, because I'm always trying something different, some fertilizer products that I'll get sent to me and things,
Mhm.
like organic dry fertilizers I get from other places, and I've fed my gardens in different ways over the years. But with this new worm system and being able to harvest and produce my own worm castings,
Mhm.
I'm really going to go heavy into worm teas, worm casting
Yeah.
garden teas for feeding my garden.
Hmm.
So we're going to test that out as well this year and see if we can't just create kind of like a whole like regenerative or free system in a
Yeah.
sense to take care of our garden with, because we really don't need much to feed our gardens, right? And
Hmm.
worms can do so much. I mean, they're really, really the most amazing, food source for all of our plants.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet the worm tea is going to work really well for you. But I mean, even I hear that and I'm like, oh, that sounds like so much work.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I guess in some way it's kind of some work in a way, but the worms are really doing most of like all of they work 24/7
They
all
do.
day,
Yeah.
all the time. They're doing all this work, basically breaking down, whatever bedding I'm setting up for them, which
Hmm.
is edible for worms, and then the food scraps and things that I'm
Yeah.
feeding them as well. So all through the winter time now, for all these months, they've been working and feeding and doing all this stuff. So now all I got my job now, and the work that I have to do is to set the next container on there and
Hmm.
coax them into this new bedding, and
Hmm.
once I get that done and try to get as many of them out of that, then I should be able to sift that worm casting's pretty easy, put it in a
Hmm.
bag, put it into the thing and aerate it a little bit for a day or two, and so it shouldn't be too much work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably not that much work when you're like used to doing stuff like that. But I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, I could do that. Or I could just like stick the compost scraps in the ground in their little spot and then do nothing else, like literally nothing else.
I love it. I love the approach. That's great. Right on. Yeah. So again, too, though, one of the things I also wanted to mention too to folks about as we're preparing and thinking about things and we're coming out of winter and all of that, sometimes we also want to be careful because timing is a big thing and a big issue. I
Hmm.
was watching a video that Linda Vodder did recently, preparing for the interview we did with her yesterday, and that was one of the things that she talked about was like getting too ahead of certain things.
Hmm.
And that kind of comes back to these change in weather. So if
Yeah.
we're going out and we say we've got leaves and everything that's just kind of covered everything up and all these things are tucked away and been protected, and then we start seeing like a really nice week of weather out there early
Hmm.
spring, and we're like, oh, let's break out the rake,
Yeah.
let's get all this stuff cleaned up, let's do all of that, and then the next week you get a nice heavy frost or a freeze that breaks,
Hmm.
comes out, and now you've exposed everything in your garden. And
Yeah.
so there are things that we kind of want to be kind of careful about when we're getting our garden spaces prepared for the new season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have made that mistake before of starting seeds way too early and then suddenly I have nowhere to put them. Like they need to be potted up, but there's literally no more space to put them. And I'm like, well, I guess I can throw you outside and hope for the best.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, again too, you want to be careful with those things as well,
Yeah.
having little baby seedlings, and if they're not ready, especially some, if you got some nice cold stuff, make sure you're getting your colder things,
Mhm.
your brassicas, your the greens, if you got greens going, spinaches, things like that, whatever are
Mhm.
colder crops, get those ones out if you're going to put anything outdoors.
Yeah.
But definitely be prepared for frosts and potential of frost, not just in planting our plants out into the garden, but also thinking about the garden space itself,
Mhm.
because we want to keep our soil as protected for as long as possible through
Yeah.
some of those freezes.
I wouldn't even like move stuff off of my soil at all until the moment when I'm putting a plant in that spot. Um,
Yeah.
I keep my mulch pretty heavy across everything.
Hmm.
And I think that it probably makes some of a difference, but it doesn't get so cold here that I'm noticing just like huge differences like you've been talking about.
Right. Right. Yeah, and definitely, and that's we want to be mulching all the time, in a sense, making sure that we're always keeping a cover, keeping that on there, and definitely, you know, if for any reason you have certain spaces that aren't mulched or don't have that sort of thing and
Mhm.
kind of are just naturally covered, you want to, again, you just want to be kind of thinking about those things in your garden spaces. Sort of like I've got different patches of strawberries all over the place, and
Mhm.
they're starting to poke out new little leaves all over. But
Mhm.
I've also got and I pile up all of my leaves into these beds to make sure that they're covered and protected. Now they're pretty cold hardy as a
Mhm.
perennial, but I still don't want to expose and pull all those leaves away from them yet until at least after my frost date, to make sure that I'm not just really you know giving them a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even probably bother pulling the leaves off of mine. Like I have mine underneath my raspberries and my blackberries, and they
Mm,
kind of like drop their leaves in the winter, and I just kind of let the strawberries fend for themselves and poke up where they will in the leaves. So
yeah,
then they
yeah,
have this like I think it's a sturdier layer of mulch underneath them too, because those leaves have been kind of sitting there for a few months, like they're just a little rotted and
yeah.
wetted down, and they're making a better barrier against weeds, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, and that's a great idea. Whenever you can just leave it and keep it, then that's the best way to go. And then just some gardeners are in trying to put other things in, and they want to get things all, do all sorts
Mhm.
of things like that. So it's just something to be, to be thoughtful of, especially with certain perennials that are, die back a little bit. You'll have some that'll
Mhm.
just kind of like die back, and their leaves will die back, and you'll be kind of tempted at sometimes to pull the dead ones off.
Yeah.
But even strawberries are similar too. They'll have the dead ones, and you'll want to pull them all off and do
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff. And it's always best just to kind of wait on that until after your last frost date to
Yeah.
be sure that you're not exposing the more tender parts of the plants to the any sort of potential frosts.
Yeah, and another note on, like, the temptation to kind of pull all those dead things off of your plants, especially plants that have, like, bigger woody stems, leaving those can be really great for, like, beneficial insect habitat over the winter.
Yeah.
So waiting until the very last minute to pull those off is gonna give those bugs a head start in your garden to go do all the good
Yeah.
things that you want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's another good point of like making sure, you got all these sort of living organisms that, have to survive even during the wintertime themselves, that are burrowing in and
Mhm.
finding little places in our leaves and in our garden
Yeah.
beds and little cracks and the little places. So when we're out there, again, too, making sure we're kind of given as much time as possible to really get in there and do
Mhm.
that kind of super cleaning, making things look nice if we're looking at an aesthetic look of our garden spaces and all of that.
Mhm.
Again, too, to help protect some of those potential pollinators and other living organisms we need at the soil level or even in the soil to ensure that we've got a good balance of nature, because that's one of
Mhm.
the things we're really striving for in a great, good organic garden, is a real balance of nature.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite thing to tell people is that like the leaves that fall off your trees are a really great place for butterflies to kind of lay their eggs. And
Hmm.
so if you're like constantly raking all your leaves in the fall, you're just like making sure you have barely any butterflies in the spring. So like the longer you can leave that stuff on the ground, the better for all of those beautiful insects.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Again, yep. So yeah, that's just one of those big pointers as we're out there. And again, too, this also really kind of depends on which region you're in. How much longer you've got to wait ultimately,
Mhm.
but being a little bit patient, because this is something that some of a lot of us gardeners don't have much of when it comes to getting our gardening season.
Yeah.
And again, too, coming back to that idea that I've taken a little bit of time off during the winter time, but I'm also, really, you know, uh, passionate about my garden and growing and all of that. So I'm ready to go, and I want to get things going. I'm, I've mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've already got peppers and tomatoes and things growing indoors because
Mhm.
I want to get things growing. I want to get them growing as much ahead of time as possible. So I'm very impatient when it comes to
Yeah.
the season, and we could use a little bit of patience at this time of year and just kind of let things, kind of move, at a more natural pace.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that too. I always want to start just a little too early. And I think it's theoretically easier for me to be patient because I can start planting stuff so soon. Like, I think I'm going to be planting tomatoes like this weekend, like today or tomorrow. And at the same time, there's not a huge penalty for me waiting longer. Like, I know people who are in much shorter seasons have to be like more exact about, okay, it is time. I got to put this in because I've only got like barely enough days to get this thing to grow to maturity. And if I'm late, I've got like all the time in the world. Like, it's not going to get cold until October.
Right, for sure. And so you're going to get your tomatoes started. So you're going to get them started indoors, or is this something you're trying to get them right directly out?
The starts are ready and hardened off, and they can go like outside in the garden like today or tomorrow.
Oh, so you've already got the starts going. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, mine are just ready right now. That's the project. In the next day is to get all of mine out of their flats into a larger container. And for me, I would suspect maybe about another week and a half, 2 weeks, and I'm just gonna start getting them right out in the garden. I've got a little bit later of frost date, but I'm sure, as I've kept in my garden journal over the last several years, that I can possibly get away with a few weeks earlier. So I'm definitely doing that. I'm keeping an eye on my soil temperature right now to make sure things are warming up nicely, and they are. We're still getting some pretty cool nights, but the soil temperature is moving up, and as soon as it looks like it's ready to go, I'm going to get those tomatoes out as soon as possible. My
Yeah.
hope being though too is that where I live, I've been getting scorched over the last couple of summers.
Oh, yeah.
So my tomato production has gone way down over the
Mhm.
last couple of summers. And again too, I usually get my tomato plants in a week or two after the last frost date. So I'll line it up to get them out around then. So my goal this year is to get them in a few weeks before my last frost date, and then do whatever type of protecting I need to do in any
Mhm.
potential frost frost nights. And even at this point in time right now, leading up to my last frost date, we might only see a couple of real frosty nights,
Mhm.
and that might only last for an hour or two. So get some floating row cover or some sort of thing to cover them up, make sure the frost isn't bearing down on them too much,
Mhm.
and hopefully I'll get some good growth,
Yeah.
before the hot season really kicks in and then stunts them back, and
Mhm.
I'll have to wait all the way until fall and it cools down, and then the tomatoes will start producing at that point. But
Yeah.
my my hope is I'll get something beforehand.
That's one of those things that I'm like right on the edge of having to deal with. And why I think that I'm in such a Goldilocks zone for gardening because I've got the mild winters, but my summers are somehow not in that zone where it's so hot that I have to consider the heat of the summer just as much as the cold of the winter. Humidity here is the thing that we
Oh
struggle
yeah,
with. Powdery
yeah.
mildew gets really bad. Keeping tomatoes disease free all season, really hard to do. But I still get fruit from them pretty consistently all summer long. And I don't know if it's something I'm doing or just being in the exact right climate for them.
Right. And so do you deal with like blight or anything like that when it comes to like having such a high humidity?
Um, I don't exactly know what it's called. It's the thing that most people get on their tomatoes that splashes up from the
Yeah.
soil onto them and the leaves turn all yellow and sometimes they're a little
Mhm.
spotty. I
Yeah.
do deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things I always, as soon as my tomatoes get tall enough, I start taking off those bottoms
Mhm.
just to, because
Yeah.
that's just going to happen. And that definitely happens. But yeah, that's good. That's something I don't think about when it comes to the East Coast until I really remember when I visited how humid it gets over there.
It's like
The
summer
whole
time.
East Coast corridor there is just some of the most humid place in the world I've ever been to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, but I think it probably dampens the temperature differences quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something else. Any other things you've got to think about when it comes to that with anything else you grow?
The humidity,
Yeah.
um, I mean, anything that is prone to powdery mildew, it's gonna get it. Like, you just gotta plan for the fact that whatever you plant has got a few good weeks and then it's probably going to die, and you got to like succession sow them if you want them to be producing all season long in your garden.
Yeah.
And then I mostly like, I could do that, but I also just kind of steer away from those kinds of plants in the first place. And I'm always picking things that just do really well with the humidity. Something I always telling people is to just save the seeds from your own garden, because those are the best adapted seeds for your area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Right on, right on. So let's see, other things that we're doing when we're getting prepared for our gardens. I know one of the things I've been doing is making sure I'm getting. This is something I think we think too much about when it comes to gardening.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that's always with us when we're out in the garden are garden tools, right?
Yeah.
We got stuff that we need to, either we got to make sure they're, cleaned and washed properly, because we don't want to be spreading pathogens and things around, or different things in different areas, especially when it comes to like our clippers, secateurs, things like that. You want to make sure they're cleaned off and sanitized. You want to make sure you just got everything's in working order. Things are sharp, clean, and or need to be replaced, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, that all sounds like a really wonderful thing to do. I am very behind on all of that. I have my little trowel that like it just sits outside all year.
Right.
Yeah, I could be a lot better about that. I've got plenty of shears that need to be like scrubbed and maybe even sharpened, and this would definitely be the time of year to get into that. I'm also getting my irrigation system kind of cleared out, which it's mostly just a very long hose and then a little drip irrigation in my garden, but got to check for leaks on that, if anything froze over the winter, and making sure the hose is like actually still in functioning order, all of that stuff.
Yes, those are that was actually, I just actually had to pull a hose because I think it split throughout the somewhere. Maybe a few different places, but I just had to replace a hose myself too. So again, these are things that we got to be thinking about as we're getting ready for the year. We don't want to be last minute going, oh no, things need water right now, and everything's all like shooting out the side somewhere. You got to last minute take care of it. So these are certain things that definitely, as we're preparing and getting ready for our season, that we want to kind of have on our checklist, to be thinking about all the different garden tools and things like that, as well as our hoses, because those are definitely something that's really important to our garden spaces.
And something else you just reminded me of that I've been doing to prepare that also maybe people don't think about is thinking about what I'm going to do with that harvest when it comes in. I do grow like a lot of produce and it all come in at once. And so what I've been doing over the winter is like, okay, I had a lot of this last year and I wasn't like quite sure what to do with it. So I just made too much of the same thing over and over. So over the winter, I'll make a lot of different recipes and kind of figure out how I might use that. And so when the time comes, I've got like my list of things that I know how to cook, I'm comfortable cooking, and I'm like excited to eat, so that produce gets used up.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about. And that's again something I don't think much about myself too. Is again the preparation, the things I'm saving and keeping, and what I want to make sure that I'm thinking about when I'm going into growing the next season. What I need more of, what I need less of, these sort of things. That sort of stuff. So and I don't think a lot. That's one of the things I probably need to think a lot more about is again too, is what I'm using things for, what I'm, and how those are being saved and preserved.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort to figure out what you're going to do with all that produce.
Yeah, sometimes, and again, also, I grow a lot for other people and all of that as well too. So if you do grow for others as well, maybe thinking about some of the things that they're thinking about, maybe communicate with some other people that you share things with your garden, things from your garden with, and see
Hmm.
about maybe there might be some things that they might want to try that you wouldn't have normally grown or something like that too, which is always a great opportunity, especially for me, to grow something new that I haven't tried growing before.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Some of my friends have their little favorite foods, and like one by one, I've been like learning how to grow them, and they're always so thrilled. And it's like brand new food to me, so it's really great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And again too, that's one of the things, and I talk about this a lot too, is that I do grow those things that I don't normally like or eat myself just
Hmm.
because I love growing things so much. And like yesterday, even we were touching on it, talking about I love growing eggplants.
Hmm.
Eggplants are just such a beautiful looking, awesome looking plants and these different varieties, these big leaves and the
Yeah.
spikes and the fruit sizes and shapes and colors, just all that sort of stuff that really fascinate me about growing plants. But I'm not an eggplant person. I don't care for them very much, so I grow those for friends so that
Yeah.
I can have them in my garden.
Yeah. And if you grow like a pretty variety of something, it's great for trading. I have like people in my neighborhood who have
Yeah.
chickens, so I'll trade produce for eggs in the summer, or trade
Mhm.
for honey that's local. Um, People tend to really appreciate, even if it's something they can always get, the prettier varieties as well. And that can make your
Yeah.
garden beautiful, even if you're not eating the thing.
Exactly, and that's another thing I don't think about much as well too, though, is that, connecting with other gardeners and people within your neighborhood, within your local area, definitely, find yourself one of those, and I have a couple of local just Facebook groups, or
Mhm.
other types of places that I know are local gardeners.
Yeah.
And then, so even go and check in those groups and those places and find some things and some people that you might be able to trade with and do that sort of thing, because that's a great idea, to even get. And for me, even, like I'm challenged with brassicas, as we talked about, so
Mhm.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna grow them as best that I can,
Mhm.
but maybe I'll reach out with somebody if they're not growing. Say my broccoli didn't do as well this year, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. Maybe I can reach out to one of my local gardeners who's a lot better at growing broccoli, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll give them some of my other things in order to kind of make up for what I'm not getting or wasn't successful with in my garden.
Mhm. And this works with plenty of things. Like I've got a friend who's a massage therapist who is always trading her massages for things that people do for her, like from mowing her lawn or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, yeah, even outside of the garden too. Let's
yeah,
trade for some other things.
yeah. It's really great, and people forget that that's even an option to ask. Like even just your friends, like, hey, I have this skill. What can we trade for? I have vegetables. You have massages.
That's I think that is a really good idea, actually. That's a good one. In fact, I might have to actually reach out in some other groups and find some people maybe in those sort of areas, things that I need and could use a little bit more of outside of the garden, and maybe make a
Mhm.
trade with somebody as well too. Because again, too, that's one of the cool things about growing and gardening, is that we get to grow more of a variety than
Mhm.
what other people are used to getting from their grocery store. We
Absolutely.
mentioned other colored carrots just a little bit
Mhm.
ago. You know what I mean? How cool or would it be to be able to trade with somebody some purple carrots that they've never had before,
Mhm.
or something, that they might have to trade you for, and be able to show people what
Yeah.
how cool gardening is, in a sense, because you get this really great variety that you're not used to.
Mhm. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love taking my friends to the garden and showing them the fairy eggplants with their cute little stripes, and giving
Yes.
them bites of tomatoes, like literally right off the plant, warm from the sun.
Yeah.
People don't get to experience that enough. So I love sharing that.
Exactly. And yeah, and being able to connect some people who don't normally have that connection with, fresh food, fresh garden spaces, and that's one of the things I love too, because I have a really kind of public facing garden spaces, because we're growing in these unused strips along our alleyways and
Mhm.
whatnot. So one of the fun things too is that when I get people who walk through there is to do similar things, is to be like, hey, check this out. We got some ripe tomatoes over here. You want to try one of these, And
Mhm.
it's just always awesome to see people's faces light up from trying something that they weren't expecting that flavor, that taste, because it's something that they're just not used to.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you might like undervalue the produce that you grow as a gardener, but even if you're growing like really basic stuff, it often just tastes better because it's fresher and it's like from these gardens that are very well nourished, and you can't really undervalue that how much it would be valuable to the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So definitely those are some opportunities that we could definitely be looking forward to as we move forward. And again, like I said, it comes with the idea of how we're preparing, what we're thinking about. So maybe we think about some of that sort of thing, those sort of things a little bit more. So
Hmm.
like you're saying, reach out to some friends, reach out to some neighbors or people who you might already regularly trade with, or create new relationships and trade opportunities in order to grow more and expand your growing experience in your garden, as well as being able to share that with others too. I think that's just such a great point.
Hmm.
Right on, right on. So any other things that you can think of that we should be thinking about as we're getting our gardens, getting prepared for our garden season?
Mm, I feel like we covered most of the stuff that I usually would think about.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of things. So yeah, that's a big thing, is or another thing too. Again, we were talking about tools. One thing
Mhm.
we can also think about too is just other types of supplies. That was one of the things I wanted to mention too. These are things that we want to make sure we're stocking up on. Do you use like an organic fertilizer, or do you
Mhm.
use a combination of certain things? Do you prepare your own soil mixtures and things like that too, so where you need to
Mhm.
be getting amendments and things like that in order to do that sort of stuff. So this is also another great time to be start going through those lists as well. What are
Mhm.
these things and these other supplies that I'm going to be needing for my garden spaces?
Yeah, and even planning ahead to next year. If you
Hmm.
don't previously have a list of what you used, maybe start making that list as you're
Yeah,
using those things that you are using.
exactly. Again too, you just don't want to be unprepared when the time comes and you need something, whether it's a slug bait or something like that, that you really need, because like I said, I grow in these alleyways. I
Mhm.
mean, slugs are just a nemesis of mine. So I got to put out these, a bait for them, and try to keep them away from my things and stuff. So I got to make sure I got enough of that. And it's
Mhm.
those sort of things. I don't want to be, seeing some plants getting devastated, think about, oh, I need to do this, go into my garden shed and then find that, oh, no, I don't have that,
Mhm.
so being prepared is a really great idea as well too. So go out there and think about those things that you might need, add those to your lists, and then get out to your garden centers too. Here's another thing too, as we're getting ready for the garden season, is one of the things we want to also be careful of is when we're starting to get back into the garden centers and the nurseries and all of that, because my wallet starts to start crying whenever I start getting out of the car in the parking lot of a nursery.
Yep.
So like, you got to be careful there too.
Yeah, it's so hard not to buy all the beautiful plants.
Yes, yes, exactly. So lots of things like that too, that going on this year, is where, that I just went to my first garden center, as I was actually doing some things, buying some supplies and getting some
Mhm.
stuff together for my season and all of that too. And we start walking around. It's one thing to go in and go buy the slug bait or whatever that
Mhm.
we're gonna get, but then our eyes start turning over here and seeing what they got growing on over there. Next thing you know, our car can't fit everything that we've trying to stuff into it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big problem. I bought some grapes like a month ago, and I didn't have anywhere to plant them. And I'm like currently working on building the place where I'm going to plant them because I could not resist buying them.
Yeah, exactly. and it's just so hard. I'm telling you, when it comes down to it, it's so hard when you love growing things and all of that. And and again too, I love variety. I love having new things and all of that. And these garden centers know this too, man. That's why they're tempting us every single year. They're putting out these nice new things
Yeah.
that that are just beautiful and look like they'd be just amazing in our garden space. And there we go, right for them. They know how to do that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I got taken in by the hardy kiwis this year because I never thought I'd be able to grow kiwi in my area, and then suddenly they're presenting me with this variety that will, and I'm like, I'll take two.
I'll take two. Exactly. Right on, right on. So yeah, lots of great things we covered here today. Again about preparing our gardens for the garden season. Making sure to. I think another thing we need to think about too is I kind of touched just a moment ago on is soil. For me, I have a lot of containers.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about that in the garden segment earlier. Are all of the containers we've got too. So one of the things I want to do also is I'm getting ready for my garden season is I start piling up and building up and putting together either recycled soil that I'm kind of amending and kind of bringing into with new compost and new soil to build up new soil so
Hmm.
that I can top off and get all of my containers prepared and ready to grow for the gardening season as well too. So that's
Yeah.
another thing that we thinking about is those containers and making sure that we got them with soil. Each and every year, I'll fill up my containers, but they always go down just a little bit more and more. Soil
Mhm.
constantly breaking down,
Yeah.
and even in our containers through the season, they'll keep going down. So we want to top those
Mhm.
up every year as well too. So that's something we want to be thinking about and building up whatever type of. For me, I have a big pile of soil I keep for just on hand for whatever I'm doing, changing out pots or planting new things,
Mhm.
transplanting, all that sort of stuff. So we want to make sure we've got enough of all of that as well too,
Yeah.
and compost and that sort of stuff as well if we need to get that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting more into containers again. Like I used to grow almost exclusively in containers, and now I've got this giant in-ground garden, and I'm suddenly finding myself with a lot more raised beds as well that I'm having to both prepare for the first time and also top off after an entire season of settling.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of material.
Yeah.
I kind of plan all year for that. Collecting compost, collecting leaves. I've got like a little leaf pile that I will collect to use as mulch on the top. And uh, it can be overwhelming to try and get all of that stuff at once. So, if at all possible, like keep that in the back of your mind all year.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's I have a basically just standing compost system.
Mhm.
I don't do a hot compost or anything. So I'm just adding things, and let the basically again too letting the worms do the work. And so
Mhm.
I'll throw food scraps out there. I'll take the the garden grass and dump it out there, which we won't have this next year because, again, you just brought up raised beds. We're going to be putting out raised beds out into the front
Mhm. Yeah.
throughout the season this next year. So that'll eliminate a lot of the grass clippings. Well, there'll be a couple of little patches that we'll have to take care of. But I just add that into this compost and just let it go throughout the
Mhm.
year and each year. So it's this time of year too. Another thing I'm doing as I'm preparing for my garden is I'm going to go through all of that and I'm going to start sifting through it and I'm going to
Mhm.
get fine compost out of that, take all of the big heavy stuff and put it back in there and start
Mhm.
over again, start piling
Yeah.
stuff on there throughout the year. And so I'll be adding that compost into my soils that I'll be using, the other garden beds and things like that as well too. So yeah, that's definitely another thing that we're thinking about, and also on the lines of containers, raised beds, and things as well too. I've got a couple of them. They're more elevated beds that I have on the back patio. But even if when we do get ones in the front, and if they're wood or are there other sort of things, or even some of the plastic containers? I got to go through and I got to check these for any
Mhm.
sort of damage. I've got to
Yeah.
look for damage, whether I have to replace things,
Mhm.
especially with the elevated raised beds that I have on our back patio. I've got to be making sure and checking that, are they solid? Are they going to hold for the season? Do I have to do
Mhm.
any sort of repairs or fixing or any sort of things like that? Replacing sides and stuff when it comes to that. So these are other things that we could be thinking about too as we're getting prepared for our season as well. Getting out there and looking for any things we might have to fix, right?
Absolutely. And that makes it much easier to get the supplies that you need at a reasonable cost. Like you were talking about with the buckets that you get from restaurants, like if
Mhm.
you have a container that you did not know was broken, you've already got something planted in it, you're going to scramble to find a replacement and probably end up paying too much for that. But if you are
Yeah.
prepared and you have like a couple extra containers that you're like, okay, like sometimes they break, I'll have some extras laying around,
Mhm.
and then you're
Yeah.
not hit with all of those unexpected costs.
Exactly, exactly. And then just thinking ahead too, just go, like I was saying too, make sure you're going around and checking those containers, checking those beds, that sort of stuff to see about how are they holding up? Especially with things with wood, you
Hmm.
know, a lot of us, and mine especially, I'm in the beds I'm going to put out in the front yard. There'll be wood sided, beds and all of that. And wood is, breaks down,
Hmm.
and it takes some time.
Yeah.
You get some nice, good, thick wood. They'll last for many, many years, but eventually, those microbes and all of those sort of things are going to start eating away. The fungi and all that are going to eat away at the sides of these
Hmm.
beds, and sometimes, they're going to start falling apart. And it's a good time of year to just kind of get ahead of all of that and make and do all the sort of repairs you might have to think about as well.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Yeah, lots of great things, man. We covered a lot of really good stuff here
Hmm.
uh, today on things to think about when we're getting our garden started. Let's see here. Try to think of some sort of rundown here. We're thinking of like hoses, tools. Do you need to get anything cleaned up? Do you need to do any? Do we need to replace anything?
Hmm.
Whether it comes to our garden beds, all of that, making sure we've got a lot of really great soil,
Hmm.
sifting our compost. Um,
Making sure you are planting things that you will use or have a plan for.
yes, exactly. And again, too, we also talked about, uh, um, maybe even talking to some neighbors and friends and things and growing
Hmm.
some things and adding these sort of things to our growing list and all of that. Being prepared, also not getting ahead of things as well
Yeah.
too. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves when it comes to getting our garden spaces prepared as well too, because we were touching on, maybe there's some life in those leaves, and some
Mhm.
pollination things that might need to survive just a little bit longer. So, let's make sure that we're being just a little bit patient as well too, as we're getting ready for our garden season. Right on, Rachel. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining with me today for this really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
Yeah, yeah, it's great again too to have you back on again too, and again why we got ourselves here on Sundays now too to be able
Yeah.
to have our previous guests back on, and hopefully again we'll get to have you back on for another discussion. Hopefully again too we'll get a good round table together.
Yeah.
One of the ideas really was, that we could all really kind of bounce things off of each other and to kind of maybe live in different regions or places and things too, where we can also offer maybe just a little bit of a different perspective on certain
Mhm.
things and all of that too as well too, which was what kind of really great. You're on the East Coast, I'm on the
Yeah.
West Coast, so we're both kind of talking from a different, those different coastal perspectives.
Mhm.
So that's really great for people to be able to get that sort of information.
Yeah. I'm always very tempted to do things alone and figure it out myself. And it always turns out better when I bounce the ideas off of other people, when I ask for help. So
Mm, yeah.
together we are much better.
Right, that's right, and that's why that's why we're doing the things that we're doing, and why we, put ourselves online and be able to help
Mhm,
people, figure some of that stuff out. As you mentioned, you like to do videos in order to help newer gardeners, beginning
mhm,
gardeners, and that sort of stuff, and to be that helping hand out there. Because, again, as I mentioned all the time on the show, I love it, and you can see it right at the top of the screen there. We're here building community through gardening, and the
mhm,
gardening community is just one of the best, greatest communities of some of the most helpful and mindful people that you'll find out there. So there's no bad questions,
mhm.
no wrong questions or anything like that when it comes to gardening. And there are so many of us out there helping and here to answer questions and help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely go down in the description below. I got a link to Rachel's channel, Auxhart Gardening, and come and check out all of her videos and follow along with her throughout the gardening season. Oh, quick question too, because I didn't really check. You're still doing like the weekly
Mhm.
in the garden kind of follow along, because I think that's one of the
Yeah.
greatest what you do in your channel too. And this is something that uh, I think you don't see a lot with a lot of gardening channels, but we're really following along with your garden season, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I make a big point of showing, like, literally everything that's going on, even if it's boring, even if nothing's happening, because when you are only seeing the highlight reels on YouTube, you can feel really bad about your own garden really fast. So it's helpful for people not only to just see, like, kind of the realistic side of, like, yeah, it's been 4 weeks and it's in the middle of winter, so this plant looks pretty much exactly the same. And then
Yeah.
also seeing, like, the failures and getting to interact with my thought process as I solve problems in real time.
Yeah, yeah. So a real, like you said, real time perspective in the garden with Rachel at Auxhart Gardening. So again, everybody get down in the description. Make sure you go and sub. Let her know that you came from the show and all of that as well too. And check out all of her videos. And again, just like we do here, make sure you're hitting that like button, commenting, and all that as well too. And again, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining with us today. Another just really wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I hope you all have a really wonderful day.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Rachel. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivy Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. Ivy Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right, all right, all right. Excellent, excellent. What a wonderful, awesome interview with Rachel Andorfer from Auxhart Gardening. So awesome of her to join with us again on the show. Just a really great conversation about getting our gardens started for the season. Just some of the things that we're thinking about this time of year as we're getting ready to get our gardens going. There's a lot of, there's a lot of these sort of things that we're just, we're plant-minded people. We're thinking about growing. We're thinking about all of the plants we're growing, and I'm certainly one of those people who's just really kind of gets that tunnel vision on the actual plants, and starting seeds and getting all those sort of things started up. But ultimately, there are all of these other aspects of gardening and these other things that we've got to be thinking about when we're growing and taking care of our garden spaces, especially as we're coming out of winter and getting to think about our garden spaces for the first time as snow starts melting away, and spring, like spring is here, and the flowers are starting to bloom and all of that. And so again, for a lot of us, some of us live in more southern regions, as I mentioned earlier, where maybe we're gardening already. We've been already kind of thinking about some of that stuff, and you're just a little bit ahead of the game on some of that. But then again, maybe there are some of the things you didn't think about, and maybe we kind of helped remind you of some of the things that maybe you could that you want to jump on and think about a little bit as before your season really, really gets growing along. So really, really great again to have that conversation here with Rachel and talk about all of that, and brought up some really great things again too. I thought that I thought the idea too of again working on trades and trading with our friends and our neighbors and other gardeners in our area, making sure we're connected with some of those folks, and then maybe working on trades and thinking about things that we could do and grow for other people. Maybe there are some things similar, like I was mentioning too. I don't grow some brassicas as well as other people might be able to. So maybe there's some things I grow really well that they don't. But so go out and get some of those conversations started with some of your local gardening friends, neighbors, and groups, and all of that sort of things. So yeah, definitely look at all of that too. And again, supplies, making sure you got all that sort of stuff, repairs, keeping things, all of that. And then another thing I thought was just a really important tip though as well too is also just a little bit of patience too, especially for some of us in the colder regions and the little colder areas who are still got several weeks to go until our last frost date. And so there's just a little bit of reservation we have to kind of start thinking about when it comes to doing certain stuff. So definitely lots of great things going on in the garden right now. I hope everybody's having a great time in their garden space as well, especially all of you who've been listening to us from the garden this Sunday on our Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show here. So again, just such an awesome, I love watching and kind of following through to with the conversation during the live streams here that we have during the live show. We've been really, just really going at it really great each and every week, and that's because of all of you who show up here each and every show, each and every week to help just keep our gardening conversation lively in the chat. And it's just really awesome to kind of watch you guys and listen to see kind of some of the side conversations that are going on as well too during our live chats here. So again, thank you all so much for joining with me here today. And again, just want to remind everybody as well too that we did have our show yesterday with Linda Vodder, and was another really just wonderful, awesome gardening conversation. And again, just really one of the funnest things about doing this whole show and having this sort of format where we get to have interviews and talk with people is just to highlight just how many wonderful, awesome people there are in the gardening community. And Linda is definitely one of those. So go back and check out that show, and also meet Rochelle Bingham from Brampton Gardener, who's a regular in our chat box too as well too. So it was really awesome to be able to get her on the show and be able to meet her in person. And definitely go and check out that as well yesterday too. And then next week on our Saturday show, remember we are both Saturday and Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Urban Gardener channel. Every Saturday and Sunday, we've got some great shows lined up. And next week, though, too, we are going to have a really great and interesting conversation. And I just want to kind of preface this with the fact that this is a person who, is joining our show, is out there promoting something that is, I think is really interesting, and I think is a really interesting conversation to have. Now, I know though that a lot of people have some really strong opinions when it comes to certain things and subjects, and especially in the gardening world when it comes to GMOs. And so we've been having a big conversation about a new purple tomato that has been made available to home gardeners. And this next week, this next Saturday, Professor Kathy Martin is going to join with us. Now, she's the one who spent years working and developing this purple tomato from Norfolk Plant Sciences. She's going to join with us and talk all about the purple tomato, what the differences between it are and other more traditional genetically modified crops that we normally hear about, and all that sort of stuff. We're going to dig into the plant science behind all of that and talk about some of the other factors and things when it comes to this and the future of these sort of plants when it comes to home gardening. I mean, before this tomato came out, all of us who share gardening content or try to help people learn more about gardening have always been confident in saying that no matter what a seed package tells you, that there were no available genetically modified seeds out there of any variety of any sort of plant to the home gardener. And that all changed this year with this new genetically modified purple tomato. Now, again, this is a bit different than traditional genetically modified organisms where they are, like taking, a plant organism and crossing it with, say, a fish or some other sort of other type of thing. These are two edible plants. It was a purple gene taken out of purple edible snapdragon put into an edible tomato plant. So I'm really interested in what the science is behind this, what makes those differences in those plants. And next week, we'll get to talk to Professor Kathy Martin all about that plant, as well as getting to meet Nicole Smith from Nicole Smith Gardening is going to join with us for our Are You Following Me segment. So I'm really excited about meeting Nicole. I actually got to meet her on Brampton Gardener's channel just several weeks back on a live stream that I jumped in. And so it's going to be great to have her on our channel this time and get to meet her on the Are You Following Me segment. And then, of course, we do have our next week's Sunday edition. On the second Sunday of each and every month, we are going to have joining with us Scott Wilson. Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel is going to join with us and ask all of your gardening questions. Bring your gardening questions for sure next Sunday. And Gardener Scott will be glad to help answer all of those and talk all about different things that we've got growing in the garden. Maybe we'll touch a little bit more on today's subject. Maybe we'll touch on some other subjects. One thing we know for sure is that it's going to be a great, fun gardening conversation, like all of the fun gardening conversations that we get to have here on the Let's Get Growing show. We are so lucky here on the show to have so many wonderful people join with us and share their passion for gardening and growing and all of that. So here, before we leave, make sure you hit that like button, hit the thumbs up. Be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification there. There's that little bell notification. If you click that, that will notify you of all of our upcoming videos and live streams coming up here on the Urban Gardener channel. And then again, be sure to share with all of your garden friends. This is our goal. We're trying to grow our audience this year. We've been doing such a wonderful job and seeing so many awesome people joining with us on each and every one of our shows so far this year. Just a great audience. So help us build that up. Share with your garden friends. Let everybody know that we've got this really great show, and help us build that garden chat in that chat box. And definitely share with all of your friends. And again, thank you all so much for joining with me here. Real quick before I go, I just want to run through here and see. Let's see. Oh, Joe was jumping in there. He says, take care of everyone. You got it, Joe and Corky from Grow Big TV. Right on, right on. Excellent. Oh, Melissa jumping in and saying, love this group. And all the people I met today were awesome. That's right. We've got awesome people right here in our chat on our show. This is so awesome. Again, to oh, Darth X too. And I saw this yesterday and I thought that was really funny. I just wanted to mention this too, that you were joining with us in the conversation yesterday. So we had Darth X with us with Linda Vader, as you could say it too. So we had Darth Vader. as a big Star Wars fan, I thought that was pretty funny as well too. Right on. Grow Big TV says, love Nicole. Yes, yes. Nicole is really awesome. We had a great conversation a couple of weeks ago on Brampton Gardener's channel. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her this next week on our Are You Following Me segment. So definitely be sure to come and join with us next Saturday. And good night, Rick. Good night, everybody. It's so awesome to see all of you here. And we'll see all of you this very next week, next Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and Sunday, same time. See you next week.